Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. This is Sunday night, January 12th. I think it's the 12th, yeah. And we got a surprise this week. It seems that researchers at Harvard University have found that being online can affect a person's attention, their memory, and social interaction, and that this can be both temporary and sustained. The internet, they say, is spewing an endless array of information, ideas, entertainment, and ways to connect with other people without actually having to be with other people. But they also found that it tends to slow how we think and how we feel in ways that are not quite positive. It seems the endless stream of pop ads and notifications appearing on there to encourage us, to divide our attention, has the consequence of reducing our ability to maintain concentration on a single task. Seems the digital world is just full of surprises. I wonder what we're going to learn later on. Right across an announcement this week, it said that for over 20 years, something called Awaken 2020 has ministered to thousands of people. But this year, in 2020, it's seeing unprecedented attendance numbers, largely thanks to Kanye West. When the controversial rapper turned outspoken Christian announced earlier this week that he and his Sunday service choir, that's their name, would perform, I gotta love it, would perform at the free Christian event, attendees began to flood the website. Tickets for the show, which is held in the Sun Devil Stadium, that holds 50,000 people, were sold out in minutes and eventually crashed the website. Lou Engle, who is founder of Awaken, is encouraged by the momentum West is causing. Lou said, "We believe Kanye is a sign to this nation that in a moment, thousands and thousands can be swept into the kingdom when God converts key people, and their voices will be like thunder." God has to convert key people for that to happen. He says Sun Devil Stadium has hosted the Super Bowl and college football championship games. It was even featured in the 1996 hit movie Jerry Maguire. But what is about to happen there in terms of national long-term significance may eclipse them all. In a press release, organizers also expressed their enthusiasm for this year's event, saying the gathering is a monumental movement launching a new decade of awakening America back to God at a critical time in our nation's history. That this will be the spark to America's third great awakening. Other artists who will be performing are Korn founding member Brian Welch, Lou Engle, Guillermo Maldonado, Jeremy Riddle, and a whole bunch more people I've never heard of. The website reads, quote, "This January 18th, 2020 at Sun Devil Stadium in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for you to be part of the Jesus awakening that is shifting history. Open the door, enter into a new era, a new decade of revival that's bringing a movement of signs and wonders, the healing of the sick and preaching of the gospel." That sounds exciting. We'll come back to Lou Engle a little bit later in the show, talk about him a little bit. Progressives and neo-Marxists across the country blushed at the thought of San Francisco having an unabashed socialist as district attorney who pledged to radically reshape the city's criminal justice practices. And just 2 days on the job, Chesa Boudin delivered. The Bay Area's new DA has fired 7 prosecutors, many of them seasoned veterans who have worked to get violent criminals off the streets. Among those fired on Friday was Mike Swart, a well-respected attorney in the San Francisco DA's homicide unit. Chesa Boudin ran as a progressive prosecutor and has a long, sordid history of far-left activism and ties to Marxists, including having once worked for the late Venezuelan ruler Hugo Chavez. Boudin's candidacy was acclaimed by American socialists, including the magazine which described him as, quote, the child of revolutionaries, end of quote. In another magazine article, Governor Boudin once described Bernardine Dohrn, who's on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, and Bill Ayers as his adopted parents. His campaign was supported by Senator Bernie Sanders and anti-Israel activist Linda Sarsour, who said she cried tears of joy upon learning of his election victory. The door to Arizona and Nevada is open. Disney's released a new TV show. It's called The Owl in the House, and it has some parents concerned. Apparently it has an emphasis on witchcraft and demons. The show focuses on a teenage girl named Luz who discovers a demon world and lives with a powerful witch named Ida, the Owl Lady. Luz disguises her identity as a human in order to survive in the demon world and attend witch school. Her greatest ambition is to be like Ida. Now, the original pitch for the show was, quote, girl hangs out with witch in hell. That by voice actor Alex Hirsch, according to Newsweek. And the show's art director, Ricky Cometa, shared, quote, we really want to make this demon realm feel like home and just had to figure out how to do it. The Owl House premiered on Friday, January 10. That was just 2 days ago, and has already been handed a second season from Disney. The show's creator, Dana Terrace, anticipated pushback when pitching the idea to Disney for a darker show, but the media conglomerate was more than willing to take the risk. Quote, there is sometimes a concern with family networks for what is considered family friendly, because Disney is such a big company that in certain corners they might not want to take those risks, Hirsch said. He went on to say Walt Disney took those risks, and that's why we're sitting in this building. You have to remind yourself that Disney is the full spectrum of emotions, creatures, and scary things. Now, as a side note, according to studies, witchcraft is on the rise in the United States. Between 1990 and 2008, Wicca grew from 8,000 adherents to 340,000. A 2014 Pew study put that number at an estimated 1.5 million people. Why? Well, largely because we're approaching what the Bible refers to as the last days. That time that the Bible describes when Satan, knowing his time is short, Revelation 12, is coming down unto you, having great wrath. We are not seeing the full force of that yet. That's reserved for the days after the church is removed from the earth, a time without spiritual restrictions, a time when God is allowing mankind to have what he has always wanted, a world without moral, spiritual restrictions. We're just starting to see the movement grow. When it actually happens, it won't be that big a deal. It won't be that big a surprise. The report by National Right to Life used yearly data from Pro-Choice Guttmacher Institute which contacts abortion clinics directly and is considered the gold standard for abortion clinic data. The total number of abortions since the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision now stands at 61,628,584. The 61.6 million abortions represent the, quote, consequences of Roe v. Wade, end of quote. A continual rise from 1973 to 1990, but then it started to drop off. 2013 dropped below 1 million, hovering around 800,000, all because of a drawing that wasn't accurate. You remember the drawing? You remember the 1973 U.S. Supreme Court decision? You remember the proponents of abortion providing the court with drawings of what a fetus looked like in the first 3 months of gestation? Of course, no one really knew what was going on in that womb. But years later, we had the technology to see it all live. And guess what? That fetus had all the indications of human life. It wasn't a blob of tissue that could be some other warm-blooded animal. It was clearly a baby. Surprise! But the carnage has continued. It has continued because we are a self-centered, immoral society. Of course, we've always been like that. We're human beings. But until 1973, we had laws. Laws rooted in biblical values. Laws that protected the unborn, the weakest among us. There's hope, however. Our current president, an immoral man, has appointed 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices, with a third struggling to stay alive. With re-election, we could see a high court with a solid majority of justices who believe human life to be sacred, even in the womb. And then you will hear the howls and the screams, not of these little ones being cut up into pieces and pulled out, one piece after another, but those who advocate such things. There isn't hardly anything in our world that is more evil and demonic than that.